I'm supposed to do the eyes of an encourager, and I'm going to do that, but I want to just step back and do a quick review of where we've come and also take just a short glance forward before we do that. When we started this series, we did, the first main chapter was encouragement as a ministry. We talked about things, how badly it's needed in an unforgiving and negative world. It's always good for us. It helps our self-esteem. It's strongly taught as one of the major purposes of our assemblies. In some places, it almost implies it's the only purpose of our assemblies. In some places, it's a very valuable commodity, but it has infinite supply, at least potentially. You can't run out of encouragement possibilities. You just can't run out. It's kind of like when Paul said, there's no law against loving as much as you want to. There's probably no law against encouraging as much as you want to also. And so there's never, and even though there's an infinite supply of it, there's never an oversupply. We don't use it, do we? We don't do it enough. We don't do it enough. So we need to think of this as a ministry. And I don't know of anybody that can't be an encourager. I'm a severe introvert, and I can do it. Sometimes doesn't get the result I intended, but I'm trying. But I think anybody can be an encourager. If you're not good at talking to people, you can send them cards. You can just do a lot of things to encourage people. Send me flowers. That would encourage me, if you sent me flowers. And so encouragement is a ministry. That was our first chapter. The next one, actually it was 2 chapters, was the power of encouragement and the power of discouragement. Bill, I believe you had the fun task of doing discouragement, didn't you? Wasn't that delightful? When we encourage other people, it is powerful. Both sides win. When you encourage someone, they win, and you win. What could be wrong with that? I mean, that's the ultimate business deal, the win-win deal where everybody wins. And so encouragement is one of those business deals, if you want to call it a business deal, where everybody wins. And so it's not a losing situation for anybody. So it's a wonderful, powerful thing to do. And I got to tell you, remember when Curtis asked us who is your top 3 encouragers in your life? I thought of mine instantly. Top 3. My mother, and my mother. She's my top 3 encouragers in my whole life. When I was born, you know what a forceps baby is? Everybody know what that is? They grab you with these big claws and pull you out. And in the 1940s, that was not a careful procedure. And the doctor grossly misshaped my head. And after I was born, the doctor said, this child will be mentally retarded for the rest of his life. That explains a lot, I guess. Okay. Never thought about that until just now. That explains a lot. Anyway, there you go. My mother, being the positive person that she is, didn't even notice that my head was misshapen. The words that are in my baby book were, "What pretty hair." That was her first statements. Her first statement. I won't tell you what my father said. I'll just say he got better as time went on. It involved God and something about ugly. I can't remember exactly. But she shaped my head. When a baby is young, the head is soft. The skull bones are soft. And she molded my head thinking she could make me smart or pretty, and she failed in both cases. But she molded my head until it was much more normally shaped. In fact, I've still got a flat spot right there in my head. Anyway, from the day I was born, she was thinking positively about me. As far back as I can remember, all I ever heard was, "Joe, you're smart. You can do just about anything." That's all I ever heard. "You're smart. You can do just about anything." And I was stupid enough to believe her. I wonder what I would have done with my life if it had gone another way. I wonder what my life would have been like. I grew up confident. Some people say cocky. Okay. I grew up, responsible. I grew up with the ability, or at least the belief, that I could do stuff, and nothing held me back. And yes, I failed on some things, and I was not the best of people at times. I got cocky or I got condescending or something, but overall, you know, it was just confidence, I hope. Way better than being scared like a rabbit of everything, because you never go anywhere with that. So anyway, my mother was my top three. There were some commercials a number of years ago that the Mormon Church put out, and it starts out with this, 10-year-old kid, and you can hear this adult in the background just berating the kid over and over and over. You're no good, you're not worth anything, you're never going to be anybody. And then they switch to the Mormon way, and the parent is talking about good things to the child. And they basically say, talk to us, we know how to raise children, essentially. Tyra and I actually bought some of their books at one point. Mormon people have written books on child rearing, and they're very positive on how to rear a child. Of course, most of us in here are not rearing a child. We have one person rearing a child right now. Well, I guess some may even be rearing grandchildren. But anyway, they have very good books on that subject. What did Paul say? He said in Philippians 4:13, I can do what? All things through Christ who strengthens me. That's pretty confident, isn't it? So he saw Christ as an encourager to him. I can do all. That doesn't mean, I can do some things. I might be able to do a few things. I'm worthless to God. I can't do anything. And even though Paul was a PhD doctor of the law, he himself pointed out that he wasn't a very good speaker. Pretty good writer at times. He wrote like a lawyer, 450 lines with one period at the end. That's typical lawyer writing. But, he had his weaknesses and his problems and everything. But yet, I can do all things. And so, if the people around you are saying, you can do all things, and the Bible tells me I can do all things, what do you think I should think? I think I should be able to do all things, right? And I won't guarantee success in every case, but I should at least try. And that's what we need to be doing. Fear is one of the first things that's mentioned in the book of Revelation of those who are being cast into the lake of fire. The fearful. Or it's either the first or the second type of thing that goes into the lake of fire. The fearful. We don't need to be fearful people. We need to be confident people. We can do all things through Christ Jesus, who strengthens us. John, one of the first, second, third, I think it's 1 John. Perfect love does what? Casts out all fear. Fear is a decent motivator for your first steps toward Christ, maybe. But not your mature steps. You should not be afraid at all of God at this point in your life. You should be confident. Okay, power of encouragement and discouragement. Of course, what happens when somebody discourages you? Then you go, "Whoo, boy, I feel great. I'm ready to go. I'm all ready to." It's almost always negative, right? It's very hard to ignore discouragement. When I had just turned, I don't think I had quite turned 40. It was in about March of 1988. I was thinking about going into consulting, being a consultant in radiation protection. And I thought, I will go to John Auxier. Some of you know him. I will go to John Auxier, the former head of the Radiation Protection Department at Los Alamos National Lab. He was just in the next lab down the street from me at SEG. PhD, eminent certified health physicist, worldwide, known all over the world. Charged $400 an hour for his consulting, mostly with lawyers. So I called him up on the phone and said, "John, I'd like to talk to you." He said, "Okay, come on down." He knew me. Went down there and I said, "John, I'm thinking about going into contract consulting, and I just thought I'd get your thoughts on the matter, some of your fatherly type advice since you're 10 years older than me." And he says, "Well, you do have your PhD, don't you?" "No, I got a master's degree." "What do you got, 40, 50 published papers?" "I think I got 2 or 3. He says, well, you really need a PhD and a whole bunch of published papers before you can be a contract consultant. And I said, thanks, and walked out. And I said, I'm just not going to believe him. I'm just going to walk away from that and not believe him. That was one of those cases where I was able to ignore discouragement, and I became a consultant. I was happy in that field for 23 years. It's hard, though, to ignore discouragement. It's very, very difficult. Some of you had, shall we say, strong parents that didn't really make you feel encouraged all the time. Curtis even mentioned that his mother never encouraged him, ever. Didn't want him to get the big head. I'd rather my children had the big head than the shriveled head, wouldn't you? I'd much rather my children be overconfident than underconfident. So anyway, some of you have had that problem to deal with. And even neglect can be discouraging. If you do something good and nobody notices, that's discouraging, isn't it? Nobody said you did a bad job. We'll let you know. It's kind of like the husband that says, I told you I loved you 40 years ago, and if I change my mind, I'll let you know. That's pretty neglectful, I'm afraid. So we need to be positive. We need to be out there. We need to be doing it. And we're down to the possibilities of encouragement, which is another chapter. And that one basically sums up that there's no place where you can't practice encouragement, and there's nobody who doesn't need encouragement. So if you're walking around looking for somebody to encourage, just do it to the next person you see, in the next place you are, or right here. Now, you can't make it up, of course. You have to be looking for it, listening for it, thinking about it. And that's what we're actually studying now. The chapter that Curtis did last week was the mind of the encourager. And basically what that comes down to is that you have to be tuned in mentally to being an encourager. And it almost requires that you be encouraged yourself to be an encourager. If you're unhappy and depressed and everything, it's very hard to be encouraging to other people, isn't it? It's very difficult. So he talked about you are what you think, and I added not what you think you are. Proverbs 23:7 says, as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Typically we say, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, but that's not actually the verse. Norman Vincent Peale, I guess he's a PhD theologian. He was a preacher and a PhD. In 1952, wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. I've got a copy of it, and it's written kind of archaically. I mean, language has changed enough in the past 60 years to where it sounds a little strange to us. But in those days, he was just absolutely raked over the coals. Why, you can't think your way to success. And he never says that if you read the book. He just says it helps you. If you think positively about things and look at the bright side of stuff, life is better for you. It's kind of like when I get stopped by the police once every 10 years for speeding or something. I hand them my driver's license and I say, I deserve a ticket, don't I? They're not expecting that. They are not expecting that. What they're expecting is, why are you stopping me? Why aren't you out getting drug dealers and murderers? And that's what they hear from people most of the time. 55 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour school zone in the middle of downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. Sitting in the schoolyard, he is. I go by 55 miles an hour playing the radio, singing at the top of my lungs, trying to get back to the office. As soon as I looked over, I hit the brakes and stopped within 50 or 100 feet. However fast you can stop from 55. Cop walks over and says, see your license, sir. He was mad, I said, I deserve a ticket so bad. I said, wasn't paying any attention at all. You could probably tell I was singing at the top of my lungs. And he, yes, Mr. Lochamy. Yes, that's correct. Well, just a minute. He goes back to the car. He comes back. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I tell you what, I'm just going to make it 15 miles an hour over the speed limit so you don't lose your license. I said, why would you do that? I could have killed a kid. No. 15 it'll be all right. About 20 minutes later, it was, Mr. Lochamy, it has been a wonderful time talking to you. Now you go on, you just be careful and don't drive so fast anymore. Have a nice day, no ticket. And people go, well, that doesn't always work. Well, no, it doesn't always work, but it doesn't make it worse either. And it sometimes works. And so, encourage people. Encourage people. Don't neglect it. Do something about it. And there's always that objection to encouragement, that you'll become too conceited. And I always point to Romans 12:3. For I say through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, every person, men and women, not to think of yourself more highly. Notice the word more. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every person the measure of faith. Okay, we read that as, do not think of yourself highly because you ought not to, and any kind of sober thinking would say, I'm no good. See, that's how we read that. It says, don't have an inflated view of yourself. If you're good, okay? And it's not conceit to say, I'm pretty good at this or that or whatever, or you're good at so-and-so. Thank you for doing such and such a thing. They might get, maybe they will raise their self-esteem to the level where it should be. Which is more likely in our world, especially among women? Too much self-esteem or not enough? What do you think, Fanny? Not enough. Major problem, especially for women. Men too, by the way, we just won't admit it. Self-esteem is in short supply in this world. And we have like 1 out of 1,000 people who are conceited beyond imagination, and we think everybody's that way, that even shows the least little bit of self-confidence. Told Jonathan Scott, remember Jonathan Scott was up here a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about somebody, and he got choked up a little bit. You remember that? He was up here, I think he was at the communion several weeks ago, not this last week, and he was talking about somebody, and he got a little bit choked up. And I noticed. And so I went up to him. I said, Jonathan, we share two things in common. We're both cocky and we both have soft hearts. He says, well, I don't think of it as cockiness. I think of it as self-encouragement. And I like that, self-encouragement. Okay, so we talked about the mind of an encourager. We need to think in those ways, power of positive thinking. And the information that we process in our brains actually comes from two primary areas. Where do we get that information that we process in our brains most of the time? Okay, but you mostly gather information with two of your senses, mostly. Your eyes and your ears, mostly those two. And we're going to talk about eyes tonight, here in the next 15 minutes, if I have time. And next week, it'll be ears. Now, if you think about it, ears are primarily an information gatherer. You can't really use your ears to encourage people. You can use your ears to gather information in order to encourage people. With your ears? Okay, you can play it. Or you can wiggle your ears in a very friendly way. I can't wiggle my ears. Anyway, and then the next week we're going to do the lips or the mouth. And that is in my opinion, that is the primary instrument of encouragement and discouragement, is what you say to people. Is your primary encouragement and discouragement instrument. And then the next week we'll do hands, which I kind of view as a secondary instrument, unless, of course, you're not very good at talking to people, and then it might become your primary instrument. A good example of that would be sending cards to people, or doing little things for them, making, candy or something to eat. Paula, when I will let her, makes me the best coconut cake for my birthday every year, and I love it, Paula. Thank you. I've stopped you several times because it makes me sick. I eat it all at one time. I get sick. Okay. So we're going to talk about the eyes of an encourager. And I'm going to kind of cut that slightly short, but I'm going to hurry, I guess, is what I'm going to do. Your eyes are possibly the most valuable, useful of your sensing organs. It's a very complex device. It's oftentimes pointed to as an example of something that couldn't have happened by accident. It's just too complex. They're very often, your sight is often taken for granted. You don't think about it much unless it's gone or impaired. Back in 1989, I blew out a retina while in Las Vegas on a contract consulting job. And over the next 6 years, I had about 10 eye operations. The other one blew out too a year or two later. About 10 eye operations, and I think I had 2 more after that. So I'm up to about 12 operations on my eyes. I'm so thankful that I can see today because I spent a whole year blind, completely blind, and as they say, blind in one eye and can't see out of the other. I spent about a year like that. Very depressing, very upsetting. And Dennis and Paula know exactly how it feels. And there may be others in here that have had major eye problems. You miss it, and you want it. And we need to pray for Dennis and Paula all the time that their eyes will improve, because it is not at all acceptable once you lose it. It's very painful emotionally to lose your eyes. So your eyes are very, very important. The eyes are often thought of as decoration. Isn't that strange? We look at people's beautiful eyes, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not their function. But sometimes we give too much value and attention to beautiful eyes. Its primary function is to gather visual information. That's its function. But it can also express feeling, which I think is an important secondary function. Have you ever noticed that you can tell if a person is smiling even though all you can see is their eyes? Their eyes can actually smile. We speak of people with deep eyes, shallow eyes, dull eyes, dead eyes, and I just mentioned smiling eyes. Is there an Irish song about that, when Irish eyes are smiling or something like that? My favorite is "You Can't Hide Those Lying Eyes." You know the song, don't you? You can't hide those lying eyes. So we can use our eyes to encourage. We can show approval. We can show interest. You know, when you go, you and your eyes are showing interest. They can show compassion. So the eyes are very, very useful for gathering information, but they also have the ability to assist you in encouraging people. There's a spiritual aspect of sight, which we might want to talk about for a minute. You may have heard of the eyes are the windows to the soul. I spent about 20 minutes trying to figure out who actually said that, and it's attributed to Shakespeare, but he doesn't say it anywhere in any of his sonnets or any of his plays. So nobody knows where that comes from. The eyes are the windows of the soul. The Roman philosopher Cicero said, "The face is a picture of the mind as the eyes are its interpreter." The eyes tell a lot about you. And Jesus called the eyes the lamp of the body. Matthew 6, 22 and 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, do you think he's actually talking about the physical ability to see? I don't think so. He's talking about what you take in through your eyes, or other senses for that matter, and it determines what your body is like on the inside. If you're always taking in trash through your eyes, guess what? Your body's in darkness. You need to be taking in good things through your eyes. The eyes are the lamp of the body. You know, we all know the story about the mote and the beam in the eye. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? And then he tells you to get the thing out of your. Let's see. Yeah. How can you clear up his eye when you've got that big plank in your own eye? Get that out first, and then you can help your brother. Here's another one, Matthew 13, verse 15. This people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, there's the ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. And one last one, blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. We need to use our eyes, not just to gather any kind of information, but the right kinds of information, so that it will be a lamp to our body and a light to the world at the same time. He also, in this chapter on eyes, talks about spiritual blindness, and he kind of uses actual, well, we'll get down to the diseases here in a second. But spiritual blindness is kind of the inability or the unwillingness to see the good in something. That's a kind of spiritual blindness. We cannot see the good. We cannot see God in things. Have you ever met anybody like that? They cannot see good in anything. You know, that's a beautiful young girl in her 20s. It's a beautiful young girl. Yes, but she dyes her hair. No. She's a beautiful young girl, but she wears too much makeup. Oh, what are you saying? You know, can't I just say she's a beautiful young girl without you complaining about her? You know, look, Mom, I cleaned up my room. Yes, but you left half your clothes on the floor. Yeah, but I picked up half of them. You know, well, honey, that's great. I see you picked up about half of your clothes. I think it looks a lot better. How about we work a little longer on it? You know, instead of, you're terrible, you know, keeping your room clean. Our daughter would go get in a drawer and clean out a drawer for 2 hours and think she'd cleaned up her whole room. But she hadn't done anything but move the drawer stuff into the floor. Anyway, so it's the inability, spiritual blindness is the inability to, or unwillingness to see the good. You've heard the song, Keep Your Eyes on Jesus. I actually looked that up. I've heard it before. I don't know that I've sung it. Keep your eyes on Jesus. You've probably heard of it too. And Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 is kind of that. It says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, he's just talked in chapter 11 about all the different people of faith, the great cloud of witnesses. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us with let me get my glasses off so I can read. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And here it is. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. So we need to avoid spiritual blindness. That's very, very dangerous and very bad for us. And it manifests itself in the inability to see what is good in things. There's nothing wrong with trying to ignore the bad side of stuff. People say, yeah, but you know, we don't want to get a false impression of everything. Well, then quit looking at just the bad stuff, because that's giving you a false impression too. If we focus more on the good, we'll still see the bad. I mean, we're so good at that, we don't even have to practice seeing that. You know, that just comes. I can do that with my eyes closed. I can smell bad. You know, that didn't come out right. I can smell bad things. So let's avoid this spiritual blindness of focusing on the bad. Now, he uses some examples of spiritual eye diseases, and I even added one. A person with persistent sin in their life is like someone with cataracts. You can't really see very well because the sin gets in the way of everything else. It fogs your vision. And so, you know, a person with persistent, you know, sin that they can't overcome or don't wish to overcome clouds their vision. And then his example is of nearsightedness, which is technically called myopia, which I had. No vision of God's future. They're too nearsighted. They can't see tomorrow at all. All they can see is right now, what's right in front of their eyes. No vision of the future at all. Spiritual myopia. Nearsightedness. And then spiritual farsightedness, which some of you, Tyra, you're farsighted, aren't you, huh? I never knew what it's called, hyperopia. That's almost a tongue twister. It's the inability to see the good right in front of you. Now, all you can do is think about way out there, but there's good and stuff right in front of you right now and you can't see it. So these are eye diseases that we should try to overcome. And once we've done all that, we need to learn to focus our eyes on the right kinds of things. And of course, society is not set up that way, is it? We're set up to see what? Mistakes and bad news. They never come on the news and go, some great things happened today. Let me tell you about all the great things that are going on in our gut. Well, that wouldn't make sense anyway. Let me tell you about some great things that are going on in our country. You hardly ever see those, do you? It's always the president did this, the Congress did that, the governor did this, somebody killed somebody, somebody, beat up somebody, somebody's got a drug ring going. Everybody in the world hates us. Wow, that's really encouraging, isn't it? Be nice for once to come on and say, nothing bad happened in the world today. It's all good. It never happens, but it would be good.
Good news tonight.
Well, see, I would want to listen to somebody that was like that. If they brought me, they can tell me the bad side, but tell me some good news to go with it. So we're mistake-oriented in our country. We tend to see the negative rather than the positive, and we need to refocus our view toward the good. And Philippians 4:8 is one of the best verses on earth for telling you what you should think about and what you should be looking for. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, I'm just going to cut out all the extra words. Whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, of good report. That's the list. If there be any virtue and if there be any praise, do what? Think on these things. And we could change it and say, look for these things. Look at those things. The honest, just, pure, lovely, good report, virtuous, praiseworthy stuff. Wouldn't you be happier if you looked at that kind of stuff most of the time? I mean, we're going to get enough of the negative as it is. We don't need to look for negative stuff. So let's focus on those kinds of things if we want to be encouragers. We need to be able to see the glory in the ordinary. Everything that gets encouragement and praise doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big. Those of us who have had children, I guess nearly all of us have, remember when they brought you that awful-looking clay sculpture at about age 5? Or that picture that looked like, I don't know what, but this is a picture of you, Daddy. Gosh, I didn't know I was entirely yellow and looked like that. What did you do? You go, honey, that's a terrible picture. That's an awful clay sculpture. You're going to have to go back and do that again. Is that what you did? Oh, honey, I love it. It's beautiful. Here, let me put, well, you won't do the clay sculpture, but let me put that on the refrigerator. And sometimes that would stay there for years, wouldn't it? I think we still had stuff on our refrigerator the kids did when they were little, when they went off to college. We finally took them down. The kids would go, would you please take that down? It's kind of like when you go to God and say, here's my life. And God looks at it and it's colored all out of the lines and it doesn't look anything like what he would like for your life to look like. And it's messy and ugly. And he goes, baby, I love it. I'll keep it forever. That's what he does to us. I love it. It's really awful. But I'm going, and he sees it as good and beautiful, just like we saw our children's stuff. I bet Brooke brings you stuff all the time. You go, oh man. Or is she highly talented? Huh?
What she lacks is in ability. She makes up for in volume.
In volume? Okay, I'm all for that. It's kind of like food. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be a lot of it. Brown, hot, and plentiful, as they say on the prairie. Okay, so we need to see the glory in the ordinary. Just about all of God's special people who led Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of these people. Paul were flawed people, and they did good things for God. But it would be easy to look at them negatively but God looked at them positively. Will Rogers has said two things, and he's quoted in the book on one of them. He says, "I never met a man I didn't like." And that's the one they quote in the book. He also said, "I don't like him. I need to get to know him better." It's easy just to see peripheral stuff on people. It's better to get to know them a little bit better and to see them. We need to look through caring eyes. If you don't really care, you're never really going to see the good. If you never notice another person when you're walking through the parking lot at Walmart, and you never notice another person in line at Walmart, and you're always running your buggy into someone in one of the aisles in Walmart, you're not noticing other people. Guess what? There's a good safety reason why you should be doing that, because some of those people might not be going to do you good. You're supposed to be paying attention to other people around you, but the primary reason to pay attention to other people around you is to see other people. Do you think Jesus ignored people in a crowd? He tended to see people. And we need to see people and to care. That's what the whole idea of agape love is about. It's wanting good things to happen to other people. If you don't ever see another person, how can you want good things to happen to that person if you just ignore them when they go by? Every now and then somebody will pull out of an intersection right in front of my pickup truck. And my first thought is, you must be having a terrible day because you didn't see my 6,000-pound bright yellow pickup truck right on top of you. And then I thought, I did that to an 80,000-pound tractor trailer truck one day. Maybe not so bad after all. He mentions in the book a child getting their glasses for the first time who was very nearsighted, who saw the tree leaves for the first time. I actually remember that. I got my first set of glasses when I was either late in the 5th grade or early in the 6th grade. My parents didn't know that I was virtually blind. The fact that I sat with my feet on the TV, laying on the floor watching TV, didn't tip them off. But I remember seeing a tree for the very first time when I got my glasses. I went, there are individual leaves on trees. I can see them. And when I read that, it just brought back all kinds of thoughts. And stars. I didn't know there were stars in the sky. There was this vague stuff, but I didn't know what that was. Now I can separate binary stars even with my bad eyes. Or maybe I'm just imagining two different stars there. And in the book, he says, caring about other people is corrective lenses for spiritually weak eyes. I think that's a good line. That's a pretty good line. Caring about people is corrective, or is glasses, let's say, for spiritually weak eyes. So we have to learn to care. That is to love, to be unselfish, to look for other people, to be able to encourage them. By the way, you don't have to stop everybody on the street that you don't know and encourage them. It's okay if you don't do that. But at least do that to the people you know. We shouldn't have unrealistic standards. We shouldn't, I've got another 15 minutes. I was thinking I had to stop at 7:15. Yay. I'm used to stopping at 15 after the hour on Sunday morning. And I just automatically thought I had to be done at 7:15. So I will finish, though. We shouldn't have unrealistic standards. We shouldn't expect super accomplishments from anyone. We should celebrate small steps, especially if that's all the person can do at that point. In Alcoholics Anonymous and Addiction Anonymous or whatever they have out there, they celebrate every day that they go out without taking a hit or getting drunk. Every day. And they count the days. Every day. We go, you made it one day, big deal, That is a big deal for them. And we need to celebrate the small things. One of the things that came up to me most recently is my oldest grandson turns 15 at the end of this month. You know what that means? Learner's permit. And I'm the only one, as far as I know, that has taken him out driving in a big parking lot. And I've done it twice now for about an hour each time. And honestly, he is terrible. But why would I expect him to be anything else? He's never driven a car, ever, or tried to. Guess what? He's getting better at it. He's beginning to get the feel. You know, we do it without even thinking. We just drive. We can talk. We can yak. We can put on makeup, mess with the radio, read maps, and usually survive. But we do this stuff without even thinking. Everything is a conscious decision to him when he's learning to drive. And it's not motor, you know, it's not built into muscle what do they call it? Muscle memory? Yeah. It's not built into his muscle memory yet. And he strives to do it. And he makes mistake after mistake after mistake. And I have to just keep saying, hey, he's just learning. He's just learning. Good job, Nate. Good. You're doing better. Now I want you to do this. No, don't do it that way. Do it this way. Don't turn that. Your other left. And but you have to be patient with people like that, and you have to give them encouragement, because what if I kept saying, you just can't drive at all. You're not learning anything. You're never going to be a good driver, Nate. Why do you even try? What do you think is going to happen? He'll get somebody else to teach him to drive, and he'll get a motorcycle. Or he'll what? He'll believe it and never learn to drive. Bless my grandmother. She told my mother never learned to swim, ever. And I know why. My grandmother said, now, Ruby Lee, don't you go near water until you learn to swim. She actually said that to her, and she wouldn't let her get near water. You have to let people make some mistakes, and then you have to praise them for the little bit of success that they have, if that's all they can do at that time. So not everybody can leap tall buildings in a single bound like me and Superman. So you have to be easy on people. It's very joyful to be an encourager. Once you get into it, it's fun to encourage other people. Like I said, it's a win-win situation. You feel good. The other person feels good. They feel good about you. So it's a good thing. It's fun. It's a joy to be an encourager. Seeing that person light up from kind words is just wonderful when you do that. When you say something nice to somebody, and a lot of times they find it difficult to accept. You know, you make that dress just look gorgeous. I quit saying you look good in that dress. That implies you don't look good at other times. I go, you make that dress look great. What's the usual response? This old rag. Okay, did you want another compliment, or are you just not willing to accept the one I gave you? I'm not sure which one you meant. You know, you make that dress look gorgeous. You know, you look so good today, and it's because you're not wearing makeup. I prefer Tyra without makeup. She doesn't wear much. It's a lie, ladies, to paint a mask on your face to where you don't look anything like yourself. You're beautiful like you are, okay? And a little bit to highlight everything here and there is fine, but don't put on a mask. I mean, good gracious, you might as well go down and buy a Halloween mask and put it on, you know. Just be your beautiful self. So it's joyful encouraging people. Seeing other people grow or do good things because of your encouragement is like seeing your own child do well. I mean, it's very similar to that. When you help a person think better of themselves, and they grow and they flower and things happen because of stuff you did to help them, that is just about as good as it gets. I'm sorry. That's about as good as it gets in this life. You just can't do anything better than that, than to make another person better by just encouraging them. You don't have to fix them, just encourage them. Okay, I'm actually going to end a few minutes early. In conclusion, your eyes are extremely important instruments for detecting opportunities to encourage. And you can also use those eyes to encourage others. We need to all learn to use our eyes for encouragement as well as we possibly can. Next week, I guess Curtis will be back, and he will talk about the ears of an encourager. And those of you who have been in my Sunday school classes know that I always end my classes with some sort of a benediction or blessing. And tonight, it goes this way. May God teach your eyes always to see the best in every situation and in every person. And may He teach you to use your eyes constantly to see opportunities for encouraging others. Talk among yourselves. Free to go, as they say.